Zyra had always been different. From the moment she was born, she could not walk like the others. Her legs would not respond no matter how much she tried. On her planet, strength and agility were everything. Families prided themselves on physical perfection, on being fast, strong, untouchable. Zyra had none of that. She could not run through the forests, could not climb the rocks, could not even walk to the river like her siblings. Her body betrayed her, but worse, her family saw it as a betrayal. Her parents avoided looking at her directly. Her brothers laughed at her mistakes. Even her sisters, who sometimes tried to be kind, would leave her behind while they played or trained. Zyra had learned to swallow her tears, to hide her fears. She had learned to stay quiet, to make herself as small as possible, to hope that she would not cause trouble. But no matter how careful she was, her existence was a reminder of weakness to those around her. One evening, the sky above the alien city glowed silver with the light of twin moons. The air was cold, carrying the sharp scent of the river that ran past the village. Zyra was resting near the edge of her home when her family approached. She sensed the tension before they even spoke. The usual harsh words were absent, replaced by a heavy silence. Her stomach twisted in fear. She had heard stories whispered by older children about what families sometimes did when someone was too weak to survive in their society. She had never thought it would happen to her, until now. Her father grabbed her arm first. "Zyra," he said, voice flat and unfeeling. "It's time to go." Zyra tried to pull back, but she could not move fast enough. Her heart raced. "Please, please don't," she cried. Tears blurred her vision as she looked at their cold faces. She saw no warmth, no hesitation, no love, only the silence of a decision made long ago. Her brothers and sisters flanked her, pushing her forward. Her body trembled with fear, not from the cold or the journey, but from the realization that the people who should protect her were the ones who would destroy her. Step by step, they moved toward the riverbank. The water below roared like a living creature, wild and merciless. Zyra could feel the current even from the shore, twisting and turning in violent patterns. Her heart pounded harder. She had never been near the water alone. Now she was being brought into its embrace not by accident, but by her own family's hand. Her father stopped at the edge and looked down at her. "It's for the good of the family," he said coldly. "For the future of the others. You will not survive with us. You cannot." Zyra could not understand how love could be absent in a parent's eyes, how someone could decide that her life did not matter. Her mind raced. Could this be the end? Could this really be her fate? Thrown into the river to be swallowed by the current? Panic surged through her. Her limbs flailed as she struggled, but her legs refused to cooperate. She was trapped, helpless, and utterly alone. And then it happened. A push. The cold water engulfed her, shocking her body, stealing her breath. She gasped and thrashed, but the river was too strong. Every wave pulled her further from the shore. Her family stepped back, faces blank, as if watching a routine, necessary act rather than a human or alien tragedy. Zyra's mind spun in terror. She could feel the river trying to claim her, each second stretching into an eternity. She screamed for help, for someone, anyone, to save her. Somewhere deep inside, a tiny spark of hope refused to die. She didn't know what or who might answer, but she prayed with every ounce of her being. As the river dragged her downstream, her violet eyes searched desperately along the bank, looking for a hand, a figure, anything that might come to her rescue. In the crushing silence of betrayal, she clung to that hope like a lifeline. And somewhere, far enough that she could not yet see, a human would notice. A human who had no obligation to interfere, no reason to risk life and limb, but whose heart would not allow such injustice. Zyra's fight for survival was just beginning. Far above the river, on a small human research vessel hovering silently in the alien sky, Commander Daniel scanned the planet below. Humans rarely visited this world. It was dangerous, unpredictable, and the locals, proud and territorial, did not welcome outsiders. Yet Daniel had been drawn here by curiosity and the hope of understanding life unlike anything on Earth. Tonight, the twin moons reflected silver light across the landscape, and the river glinted like a ribbon of molten metal. Daniel's eyes caught a sudden commotion on the far bank. Something small, moving violently in the water, flailing in desperate struggle. He squinted, zooming in with his optical instruments. It was an alien, a humanoid, but unlike any species he had encountered. Its skin shimmered faintly, a pale violet hue under the moonlight. The creature's limbs twisted in the current, paralyzed, unable to swim, unable to fight the river that tried to pull it under. Daniel's chest tightened. He had seen danger before. He had fought fires, storms, and battles across galaxies. But there was something in the helplessness of this alien that pierced through the professional detachment he usually relied upon. "Captain, we have a situation," Daniel muttered to his AI assistant, though no one else was there. "It looks like it's drowning. We need to intervene." The AI hesitated, warning of the risks. Interference could provoke the alien settlement. Protocol advises observation only. Daniel shook his head. "No, not this time. Life is life. No protocol is worth leaving someone to die." With that, he activated the vessel's emergency descent module and jumped. The atmosphere of the planet was thick and heavy, but his training held him steady. He fell toward the river, breaking through the air like a spear, feeling the chill bite his skin even through the protective suit. Below, the current roared louder, as if aware of the life it wanted to claim. The alien's eyes met his as he approached, large, violet, wide with terror. Zyra's body trembled violently, half submerged, half at the mercy of the river. And in that moment, Daniel understood something he had never felt before. A pure, raw need to save someone, to act without hesitation, without question. He plunged into the icy water, the current immediately testing his strength. Each stroke was a battle. The water pulled at him, trying to drag him downstream. But Daniel refused to give in. His focus was on Zyra, whose small, quivering form he could now clearly see. The fear in her eyes was unmistakable, the betrayal etched into every movement. She had been abandoned by her own family. As he drew closer, Zyra's frantic thrashing increased. Her tiny arms slapped the surface, searching for something to hold on to. Daniel reached out and wrapped his arms around her torso, holding her tight. She gasped, startled by both the human's touch and the sudden stability in the chaos around her. "You're going to be okay," Daniel shouted over the roar of the river, his voice firm but gentle. "I've got you. Just stay with me." Zyra blinked at him, unable to speak at first, paralyzed not by her body but by disbelief. No one had ever spoken to her with words like these. No one had ever looked at her with care, with determination to protect. She wanted to believe, wanted to trust, but years of fear made it difficult. Still, clinging to him was the only thing keeping her from being swept away. Daniel fought against the relentless current, dragging them both toward the riverbank. Every second was a struggle. Every wave threatened to drag them apart. He felt Zyra's trembling body against him, her tiny hands gripping his suit, her head resting briefly on his shoulder. In that moment, the river became more than water. It was a test of courage, a force trying to separate despair from hope. As they neared the edge, Daniel could see her family frozen on the shore. Their eyes were wide, silent. Their plan, their cruelty, had been interrupted. Daniel's heart hardened, not with anger, but with the determination to save the life that truly mattered. Somewhere in the alien world, a line had been crossed, and Daniel, a human, had crossed it to remind them that courage and compassion were not bound by species, race, or planet. Zyra's fight had not ended. It had just found a champion. The river was unforgiving. Its cold, relentless current tore at Daniel and Zyra, pushing and pulling them in opposite directions. Every stroke he made felt like an uphill battle against a force that seemed alive, that seemed to know exactly what it wanted, to swallow them whole. The water rushed around Zyra's small, fragile body, dragging at her arms and legs. She screamed, a high, panicked sound that mixed fear and disbelief. Daniel tightened his grip around her torso. "Hold on, don't let go," he shouted over the roar of the river. His muscles burned from the strain, his lungs gasping for air as he fought the icy water. The current tried to twist them, tried to pull them downstream faster than he could swim, but he refused to yield. Every inch he moved forward was a victory. Every wave he overcame a promise that Zyra would not die today. Zyra's mind spun with terror and confusion. She had always been told that her life was worthless, that her family's decision was final, that she had no place in this world. And now here was a human, someone from a faraway planet, fighting with everything he had to save her. She could hardly believe it. Her tiny, trembling hands clung to his suit as if her grip alone could keep him tethered to her, could keep her from being swept into darkness. Why are you helping me?" she asked between gasps. Her voice was almost lost in the roar of the water, fragile but determined to be heard. Daniel's eyes met hers, unwavering. Because your life matters. Because no one deserves to die just for being different. I don't care if you're alien, human, or anything else. This is wrong, and I can't let it happen. Zira's heart wrenched at his words. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever defended her existence, even when she could do nothing for herself. She began to believe, if only a little, that survival might still be possible. She let his strength guide her, letting go of the fear that had chained her for years, if only for a moment. The river tested them again. A massive wave slammed into Daniel's side, forcing him to dip beneath the surface. Water filled his mouth, and the shock of the cold made his muscles seize. Zira gasped, panic rising, but Daniel emerged moments later, dragging them both forward. Almost there, he grunted, determination etched across his face. Just a little more. As they neared a shallow bend in the river, Daniel felt Zira's small arms wrap around his neck, gripping tightly. He noticed the tremor in her body and realized she was crying, silent tears mixing with the river water. He wanted to say something to comfort her, but the focus needed to stay on the battle against the current. Keep holding on. You're doing great. We're almost safe. The roar of the river was deafening, but Daniel's mind was clear. Every movement, every stroke was precise, calculated to save her life. The alien currents were strong, but human determination can be stronger. He had faced impossible odds before, but never had the stakes felt so personal. Never had he felt such urgency, such connection with a life that was not his own. And Zira, for the first time, felt something she had never known. Trust. Trust in someone else's strength, in someone's care, in someone who refused to let her drown. The terror in her eyes slowly began to soften, replaced by hope. She felt the current pulling less, the bank drawing nearer, and the faint warmth of a human who would not let go. Finally, with one last surge of energy, Daniel pushed through the final waves. His feet found the shallow ground beneath, and the current lost its grip on them. He fell forward onto the riverbank, dragging Zira with him. She collapsed against him, shaking, exhausted, and crying freely. For a moment they lay there in silence, the river still roaring behind them. Daniel held her close, letting her rest against his chest, his arms around her like a shield against the world. Zira looked up at him, wide-eyed, tears streaking her face. You saved me," she whispered, almost afraid to believe it. Daniel smiled faintly, worn but steady. "I did, and I won't let anything happen to you. Not now, not ever." In that moment, Zira realized that even in a world filled with betrayal, cruelty, and fear, there was still hope. And sometimes it came from the most unexpected place, a human willing to fight, to risk everything, to save a stranger simply because it was the right thing to do. The river had tested them, but courage, compassion, and the human heart had triumphed. Finally, the struggle ended. The river had lost its grip, and Daniel dragged Zira onto the soft, muddy riverbank. The water had soaked her thin, trembling body, and the cold had numbed her senses, but for the first time in her life, she was safe. She lay against him, shivering, coughing, and gasping for air. Her heart still raced, but the terror that had gripped her moments ago began to ease. Daniel sat back slightly, keeping a firm hold on her, scanning the surroundings. Her family stood a few steps away, frozen like statues, eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Their carefully constructed world of strength and cruelty had been interrupted, challenged by the simple act of a human refusing to look away. Zira's father's jaw tightened. He had expected no interference. He had expected the river to claim her, as tradition demanded. But here she was, alive, trembling, and held by someone who did not even belong to their world. Zira could barely speak. Her lips quivered, but no words came. She only clung to Daniel, her small arms wrapped around his neck. She felt the warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart, and something shifted inside her. The fear she had carried all her life, the terror that her own family might abandon or harm her, began to fade, replaced by a fragile but real hope. Daniel spoke softly, as if the sound of his voice alone could anchor her. "It's okay. You're safe now. You don't have to be afraid anymore." Zira's violet eyes met his. For the first time, someone had truly seen her, not as a burden, not as weak, but as someone who mattered. Her lips quivered and a small, broken smile appeared. I thought they wanted me to die," she whispered. Daniel shook his head gently. "No one should ever think that about themselves. Not anywhere, not ever. You're stronger than you know. Your life matters." The river gurgled behind them, a reminder of the danger they had just escaped, but it no longer seemed threatening. The true peril had been the people who were supposed to protect her. And yet here was someone, an outsider, a human, who risked everything to save a life that had been deemed unworthy. Zira's mind raced. How could one person care so much when her entire family had turned against her? Her family finally moved, stepping closer. Their faces were pale, conflicted, and uncertain. Zira's father's voice was low, almost trembling. We never expected a human." Daniel looked up at them, unwavering, his voice firm. "Life is sacred. No tradition, no culture, no law should decide who lives or dies. This young woman is alive because I chose to protect her. You should remember that." Her siblings averted their eyes, ashamed. They had always laughed at her, mocked her, and now they realized how close they had come to losing her forever. Zira could feel the weight of years of fear and rejection, but she also felt something new, an unspoken shift in their world. A crack in the wall of cruelty they had built. Slowly, Daniel helped Zira to her feet, or rather supported her weight. She couldn't stand on her own, but she didn't feel weak. The human strength was her anchor, his courage her shield. Together they moved a few steps back from the riverbank, away from the edge into the soft grass that smelled faintly of the forest. Zira looked around. The world seemed different now, not because it had changed, but because she had. Fear still lingered in the corners of her mind, but it was no longer the only force. Hope had entered, fragile but persistent. And it had come in the form of a human who refused to turn away from someone in need. Daniel crouched beside her, brushing the wet hair from her face. "You're safe. You'll be okay. I promise." Zira's tears fell freely now, mixing with the dirt and water on her cheeks. But for the first time they were not just tears of fear or despair. They were tears of relief, gratitude, and the first spark of something she had almost forgotten: trust. The river, once a place of death, now felt like a symbol of survival. Zira had been thrown into it, abandoned, and yet here she was, alive. And for the first time, she understood that life could be bigger than fear, bigger than cruelty, bigger than tradition. And it had taken just one human to show her that truth. Zira's family stood on the riverbank, a tense silence stretching between them and the human who had saved her. Her father's eyes were hard, but there was a flicker of doubt now. He had expected no interference, had believed tradition was stronger than compassion. And yet here was Daniel, a stranger holding Zira in his arms, wet and shivering, alive against all odds. Her oldest brother stepped forward, jaw tight, anger flashing in his eyes. This human has interfered in our affairs," he spat. "This is not your world. Step back or you will face the consequences." Daniel's gaze did not waver. His stance was firm, unafraid. "Consequences?" he asked calmly. "For saving a life? For protecting someone who had no choice, no defense, and no hope? You call that a consequence?" Sarah's mother looked away, ashamed, her voice quiet. We did what we thought was best. She is different. She cannot survive like the others. It is our way, our tradition." Daniel shook his head slowly. "Your tradition is cruel. Life is sacred. No law, no custom, no belief should allow someone to be cast aside because they are different. Do you understand that?" The words hit them like a mirror. For the first time, Zira's family saw their actions through the eyes of someone who did not share their prejudices, someone whose morality was simple but unyielding. Their daughter, their sister, who had lived her whole life in fear and isolation, was not a burden. She was a life worth protecting. Zira, still trembling in Daniel's arms, whispered softly, They wanted me to die." Her voice was small but carried the weight of years of pain, rejection, and betrayal. Daniel looked at her family, his eyes unwavering. "And I will not let that happen. No one should ever feel that way. Not here. Not anywhere." The siblings shifted uneasily, the confidence they had felt moments ago replaced by shame and guilt. The cruelty they had accepted as normal now seemed monstrous. Her brothers lowered their heads, and for the first time, they saw Zira not as a weakness or a burden, but as a being with value, with feelings, with a right to live. Her father took a hesitant step forward, his voice rough. We thought we were protecting the family. We did not know another way." Daniel's expression softened, but his tone remained firm. "Protecting your family does not mean destroying one of its members." True strength is not in casting out the weak. True strength is in protecting and lifting each other. You are stronger together, not divided by cruelty. Zyra's mother's shoulders shook as tears rolled down her cheeks. She reached out instinctively, but Daniel gently blocked the motion, letting her see Zir. As choice, Zyra took a small step forward, leaning slightly into Daniel's side and looked at her mother with something new, a spark of courage and independence. I am alive, Zyra said, voice quivering but firm. Not because you saved me, but because someone else believed I mattered. And I will live no matter what you think. Daniel nodded, proud, and shifted slightly to give her support. The family stood in silence, absorbing the weight of her words. They had almost lost her, had almost chosen death over life, and now they faced the consequences. Not through punishment, but through realization. The alien culture that valued only strength had been challenged. Tradition had been questioned. And in the middle of it all stood a human, a stranger showing them that compassion, courage, and the courage to act against cruelty could change everything. Zira's family slowly sank to the ground, the weight of shame pressing down on them. They had seen the truth, seen the difference between blind tradition and real morality, and Zira finally could breathe. Not only from surviving the river, but from facing the family who had abandoned her, knowing that a new path was possible. Daniel held Zira close. "You are safe now," he whispered, "and I promise you will never face this alone again." For the first time, Zira believed it. And for the first time, she felt that courage, compassion, and hope could overcome even the deepest fear. The riverbank was quiet now, the chaos of the rescue behind them. Zira sat on the soft grass, wrapped in a thick, warm blanket Daniel had draped over her shoulders. The cold had left her body numb, but a warmth lingered in her chest, the warmth of hope, of safety, and of someone who truly cared for her. For the first time in her life, she did not feel invisible or unwanted. Daniel sat beside her, keeping a careful watch. His human instincts had taught him that healing did not begin with words alone. It began with presence, with reassurance, with letting the person know they were not alone. "You're safe," he said softly, almost to himself as much as to Zira. "Nothing will harm you now." Zira's violet eyes were wide, reflecting both wonder and disbelief. She wanted to speak, but words failed her. Her voice had always been small, unheard, drowned out by the jeers and coldness of her family. Yet now, even if she whispered, Daniel would hear her, and that was enough. She leaned against him slightly, drawing strength from the steady warmth of his body, the firm weight of his arms around her. For hours, they remained like that, the river behind them gurgling gently, the forest around them whispering in the wind. The danger had passed, yet the memory lingered. Zyra's mind replayed the terror of the current, the cruel faces of her family, and the overwhelming relief when Daniel had arrived. She realized something profound. Life could be terrifying, but it could also be beautiful, especially when someone dared to care. Daniel finally spoke again. "We'll need to get you somewhere safe. Somewhere you can rest, recover, and think about your next steps." Zira nodded, feeling a small surge of courage. She had never thought about a future for herself. Her life had always been a series of limitations, dictated by fear, by her family, by her inability to walk. But now, for the first time, the possibility of choice existed. She could survive. She could live. She could even thrive. Do you really think I can?" she asked, voice trembling. Daniel smiled gently. "I know you can. You've already fought more than most ever will. You survived the river. You faced fear that could have crushed anyone. And now you have a chance to take control of your life. That's more than most beings ever get." Zyra blinked, tears forming again. They were not tears of fear now, but of relief, of gratitude, and something else, a budding sense of self-worth. She had spent her entire life being told she was weak, useless, unworthy, and now a human stranger had shown her that her life mattered, that her presence could change not only her own fate, but the world around her. In the days that followed, Daniel helped Zira begin small steps toward independence. He encouraged her to move her arms and stretch, to build her strength wherever possible. Every small success became a triumph. Every smile, every laugh, every glance of wonder filled her heart with a courage she had never known. Zyra's family watched from a distance. Some felt guilt, some confusion, but most of all they felt awe. They had almost lost her, and now they saw that their definitions of strength and worth were flawed. Compassion, courage, and human determination had shown them a different path, one where every life was valuable, regardless of limitations. Even in this new beginning, Zyra understood that the road ahead would not be easy. Her body would never fully obey her, and some days would still be painful, but she no longer faced them alone. Daniel's presence reminded her that someone would always fight for her, would always believe in her, would always protect her. As night fell, the twin moons reflected off the river, silver and calm. Zyra looked up at them, a soft smile on her face. For the first time, she felt hope not as a distant dream, but as a living, breathing part of her existence. She had been thrown into darkness, abandoned by those who should have loved her. Yet through courage, compassion, and human kindness, she had found light, and she knew deep in her heart that she would never let it go. Days turned into weeks, and Zyra began to feel life in a way she had never known before. The fear that had once ruled her world, the fear of being unwanted, of being cast aside, was slowly being replaced by courage, trust, and hope. Daniel stayed by her side, teaching her that life could be more than survival. It could be about joy, curiosity, and the connections she chose to keep. Her family, once cold and cruel, now watched from a distance. They saw her growing stronger, her spirit shining despite her paralysis. They noticed how she smiled at the smallest things, how her eyes sparkled with curiosity, and how she responded to Daniel's gentle guidance with courage they had never seen before. Their own hearts, hardened by tradition and pride, began to crack. They began to realize that true strength was not about discarding the weak. It was about nurturing life, protecting it and valuing it in all its forms. One evening, as the twin moons reflected silver across the calm river, Zyra and Daniel walked slowly along the riverbank. She moved with his support, her small hands gripping his firmly. The water sparkled, gentle now, a stark contrast to the violent river that had almost claimed her life weeks ago. Zyra looked up at the human beside her, a quiet admiration in her violet eyes. You saved me," she said softly, her voice filled with gratitude and wonder. Daniel smiled, brushing a wet strand of hair from her face. "No, you saved yourself. I just gave you a hand when you needed it. Courage and life come from you, Zyra. I only helped you see it." Zyra blinked, thinking of the river, the terror, the betrayal of her family, and the strength it took to survive. She realized that every moment of fear had been replaced by this moment of choice. She could live, she could hope, she could trust, and she could even forgive, not because her family had earned it, but because she now understood the power of compassion, of taking control of her own life. Her family approached hesitantly. Her father's face was pale, lined with shame, but his eyes were filled with an unspoken plea for understanding. Her mother and siblings followed silently. Zyra turned to face them, standing tall with Daniel by her side. She did not look weak. She did not look defeated. She looked alive, radiant with the knowledge that her life had value beyond their judgments. "I am alive," Zyra said firmly, her voice carrying across the riverbank. "Not because of your rules, not because of tradition. I am alive because someone cared enough to act, and I will continue to live, to grow, to learn, and to be happy, no matter what you think." Her family could only stare. No words could erase the lesson they had been shown, the lesson that humanity, courage, and compassion could break through cruelty, fear, and pride. Daniel's presence had been more than a rescue. It had been a mirror, showing them what life truly meant. Strength was not in abandoning the weak. It was in protecting them, helping them rise, and valuing them as they were. Zyra took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past lift slightly from her shoulders. The river that had once been a symbol of death and betrayal was now a reminder of survival, courage, and hope. She turned to Daniel, her eyes shining. "Thank you," she whispered, a simple phrase carrying the weight of a lifetime. Daniel smiled, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You don't have to thank me. Just promise me one thing. Never let anyone make you feel less than you are. You are strong, you are brave, and you are alive. That's enough." Zyra nodded, a sense of peace settling over her. For the first time, she felt that life was hers to live. The past, filled with fear and cruelty, could not define her. The future, filled with hope and courage, awaited her. And humanity, through the simple act of compassion and bravery, had reminded not only her but her entire family that every life is precious. Every being deserves care. and that even in the darkest currents, someone will always dive in to save those who cannot save themselves. The twin moons reflected in the river, silver and calm as Zyra took a deep breath and stepped forward, supported by Daniel. Her journey had been terrifying, painful, and uncertain, but it had also been filled with courage, love, and the undeniable truth that life is worth fighting for. And Zyra smiled, finally free, finally alive, and finally believing in hope.